Hello students, this is Nirmala from Vivekananda Academy of Human Excellence. Today we are going to see class 10th History, the Age of Industrialization. First of all, we will see how the condition of manufacturing was there before industrialization. When industries were not there, which manufacturing was done or how people were making many things before the industrial revolution. The period before industrialization is called as proto-industrialization. Proto means previous or before. Proto-industrialization is referred to the phase which existed even before factories began in England and Europe. There was large-scale industrial production for an international market not based on factories. At that time also import-export has been done on large-scale industries were producing, but these industries were not with the machines, or many of the things were manufactured without machines before industrialization. In the 17th and 18th centuries, merchants from Europe moved to the countryside, supplying money to peasants and artisans, requesting them to produce for an international market. So all this work has been done in the countryside, means in the villages in 17th and 18th century. So these merchants or the suppliers were going to the village, and which artisans, peasants were there who were manufacturing different things to export that internationally. These merchants were providing them money for investment and requesting them to produce the things to export internationally or international market. Merchants were restricted to expand their production within towns because rulers granted different guilds the monopoly right to produce and trade in specific products. Now, these merchants have some restrictions that which rulers were there at that time in 17th and 18th century. Rulers were forcing the merchants that particular products must produce to sell in the international market in other countries. In the countryside, poor peasants and artisans eagerly agreed so that they could remain in the countryside and continue to cultivate their small plots. Now in rural area, in the villages, poor peasants and artisans were there, but they also have become agree. And why they were agree for this work? Because they could complete their agricultural works also, as well as they were getting extra income through these different products which they are manufacturing for the merchants. The proto-industrial system was thus part of a network of commercial exchanges controlled by merchants. So before industrialization also, international market was full of many of the things which are manufactured in countryside by the peasants and artisans. And it has a commercial value also. Now we'll turn towards our actual lesson. To begin, we will discuss this picture. If you see your book on the first page, this picture is given Dawn of the Century. The name of this picture is Dawn of the Century. Dawn means early morning. So what is the dawn of century? That we'll see. This artwork was basically a cover page of a music book. One of the music book, this cover page, outer cover is there. In 1900, a famous music publisher, A.T. Paul, had produced this book. So this is just a music book, but its cover gives us a lot of information that it was in 1900 which new century was going to start. So it is called as dawn of century. If we look into the picture, we will see an image of a goddess. She is picturized as an angel of progress who bears a flag of the new century. So, this woman is picturized as an angel, which is showing that in this new era, in this new century, the whole world is going to develop or progress will be there, and she is carrying one flag also of the new century. She is standing on a wheel with wings that will take her to the future. So, on her body, wings are there, and under her feet, wheel is there, which is going to run, and the development or the new era will come soon. Behind her are the symbols of progress such as railways, camera, machines, etc. Before this, we have seen no any vehicles or such things were there. In this era, after 1900, in this 20th century, everything was going to change. New machines are going to come like railways, cameras, and different machines were planned to come. So, this picture is giving us a lot of information about 20th century. If we turn towards figure 2, this is again next picture. In this picture, two magicians have shown, which is published in Inland Printers, 26 January 1901. There were some more examples and depiction of glorification of machines and technology by the people. One such was the picture that appeared on a trade magazine titled The Two Magicians. So, who are these two magicians? On the top is Aladdin from the Orient, who has built a beautiful palace with the help of his magic lamp, and below him is the picture of a mechanic. He is the one who, with his modern tools, has built bridges, ships, towers, and tall buildings. Aladdin is shown as the symbolic representation of East and past. On the other hand, the magician or the mechanic shows the future. So, in these two pictures, both magicians means one is Aladdin who makes new things with the magic lamp, and another is a mechanic who makes the buildings, makes furniture, or he makes many more things with his tools. Now we'll see the age of industrialization. The history of industrialization is all about development and technology progress. So what we study in the history of industrialization, that how the development has changed, how manually the things have done, now machines have started to do these different types of works. Now if we see the example of our house also, many more machines we use from kitchen to hall, everywhere different machines are there. That is the impact of technology. Even when factory were not there in England, there was large scale industrial production for international market. This period was referred to as proto-industrialization by the historians. Now, what happened before the Industrial Revolution? In the 18th and 19th centuries, merchants started migrating to the countryside, supplying money to the peasants, artisans, persuading them to produce for an international market, etc. Now if we see, the demand for goods have been increased, but merchants couldn't expand production with town. Now which merchants were providing money to the peasants and artisans, but they were not providing anything in the town people. Urban craftsperson, powerful control over production, regulated prices, restricted the entry of new people. Then which craftspeople were there in urban areas? They did not allow any other person in city because they wanted the work whatever merchant will give to themselves. They did not want to share that work again. It was difficult for new merchants to set up business in town, so they turned to the countryside. And that's why these merchants, which new merchants have come in the city, they have turned towards the villages instead of the city. Merchants, clothier in England purchased wool from a wool stapler, carried it to the spinners, fullers, and finishing was done in England. So making a cloth was not an easy task because it was going through different people, through different ways or the vehicles. So there were staplers were different, then spinners, fullers, finishing. These people were working different works for the finishing. At last it was going to London. So it was very difficult task to make a cloth with a long process. Any cloth was manufactured. Export merchant sold the cloth in the international market. Then these merchants were making this market and they were selling it to the international market. It was controlled by merchants and the goods were produced by a vast number of producers. Now this whole market, international market, has been controlled by merchants and the goods were produced by a vast number of producers because there was international market available. 20 workers were employed by each merchant. We can see here the picture of spinning jenny which has come for the spinning of cotton. The new words are stapler. Stapler means a person who staples or sorts wool according to its fiber. Fuller, a person who fulls, that is gathers cloth by pleating. And carding, the process in which fiber such as cotton or wool are prepared prior to spinning. Proto, this word indicating the first or early form of something. In this picture, you can see a fitting shop at a railway works in England. The Illustrated London News, 1849. So, how these different machines have come for railways also we can see on the second picture. It is a shipping factory in 1830. You can see how giant wheels moved by steam power could set in motion hundreds of spindles to manufacture thread. So through the machine how the work has become very easy, you can see here. Now the second phase of industrialization, the new industries could not easily displace traditional industries. It was not that possible because people were not ready to come in the industries to work, as well as they afraid of these machines, or they afraid that their old traditional work will go. Less than 20% of the total workforce was employed in technologically advanced industrial sectors. So the educated people, skilled people were working. But they were very less than 20% only people were working here in the industries. Large portion of the output was produced not within factories but outside within domestic units. So large portion of that output what was there, that was produced in domestic units, cottage industries, small industries, or household people were manufacturing the things. Then third phase, the pace of change in the traditional industries was not set by steam powered cotton or metal industries. So this third phase says us that traditional which industries were there was not set by steam powered cotton or metal industries. Those were run by handmade machines or on the power loom. Seemingly ordinary and small innovations were the basis of growth in many non-mechanized sectors such as food processing, building, pottery, glasswork, tanning, furniture making, and production of implements. So these which small innovations were there, ordinary innovations were there, those were basis on the growth in many non-mechanized sectors. So there where machines or mechanism was not used, like food processing could be done household in cottage industry, or building, pottery, this also was household work which could be done. Fourth phase is technological changes occurred slowly. They did not spread dramatically occurred the industry. So it was not possible to change the mindset of the people all of a sudden or within very less time. So it was time consuming, or it has taken a lot of time to change the mind of the people to turn towards technology, to turn towards modernization. New technology was expensive and merchants and industrialists were cautious about using it. So using this new technology in the factories was expensive. So these merchants or the owner of the factory, they should have that much money or that capital they should have. So they were afraid to take this challenge to use this technology in the factory, and that's why they were taking precaution for this, that before investing a lot of money they were thinking a lot. The machines often broke down and repair was costly. Now when they were using these machines, if they decide to use these machines, the technology, if sometimes it will break down, if any repairing will come, in that at that time a lot of money again was required, that repairing also was expensive, and that's why they afraid to use these machines. They were not as effective as their inventors and manufacturers claim. So who have invented the machine, or who have manufactured that machine, that technology, as they were claiming, as they were giving us assurance about the machine, those machines were not of that quality, and that's why again and again some work was coming front and repairing was there. Many of the times those machines were breaking up, and that's why people were not agree to use those machines or to use that technology. Now we'll turn towards the next part, that is important part which has changed the industrial work or industrialization Steam engine and James Watt. As we know, James Watt invented this steam engine, or he improved the steam engine. You can see the picture of that steam engine here. James Watt improved the steam engine produced by Newcomen in 1781. This steam engine firstly produced by Newcomen, but that has not worked that much. Afterwards, James Watt has made some modifications in that, and then it has come in force. His industrialist friend Matthew Boulton manufactured the new model, but for the years he failed to find any buyers. He manufactured that, his friend Matthew Boulton, but no any buyer was there, because which previous problems we have seen, no any merchant or industrialist wanted to use this technology in their factory because it was expensive, its repairing also was expensive. Thus, even the most powerful new technology took time to be accepted by the industrialist. So, to accept these machines, to use the technology has taken a lot of time. This proved that workers in mid-19th century were the traditional craft persons and laborers, not the machine operators. So in mid-19th century, these traditional works only were in the force. Traditional craftspersons, laborers, they were only manufacturing the things, not any machine. In many industries, the demand for labor was seasonal. Gas workers and breweries were especially busy through the cold months. So, they needed more workers to meet their peak demand. So, gas workers and breweries were busy that time in cold months. Breweries means which the drinkables like tea, coffee are there. So they needed more workers to meet their peak demand. Which was peak demand? In the month of cold season only more workers were required, because to manufacture these breweries, to make these breweries and gas works. Bookbinders and printers catering to Christmas demand, to needed extra hands before December. So these works were seasonal. In the cold season, different works were there, so different workers were required. At the time of Christmas, again for bookbinders, printers, catering to make many of the food items, these workers got the work. At the waterfront, winter was the time that ships were repaired and spruced up. So, which ships were working underwater to repair these ships? Winter was the great time, because in winter those ships can't go in the oceans for journey. So, in the winter they will be repaired. In many industries, the demand for labor was seasonal. As we have seen above, that some works were only done in the winter season. So that time these laborers were getting the work. Some workers were getting work in rainy season. So according to the work, according to the season, there was demand for labor. Gas works and breweries were especially busy. So that time only these workers were getting the work. A range of products could be produced only with hand labor. So some of the products were there, range of products could be produced. So means some types of products were there which could be made or which could be manufactured only through the hand or with the hand labor. In Victorian Britain, the upper classes, the aristocrats and the bourgeoisie preferred things produced by hand. So many of the upper class or aristocrats were there. They were using handmade material, handmade clothes, like handlooms are there, hand woven clothes are there. Like that, they prefer to show their richness, to show their aristocracy. Handmade products came to symbolize refinement and class. Handmade products are very fine, without any mistake, as well as it was depicting as a high class, that these people belong to higher society. They were better finished, individually produced and carefully designed. How these products were handmade products? They were better finished because each product is made by individual person with personal attention. Individually produced, that one person was making one product, as well as with special attention, with different design, different color, whatever is the wish of that owner, what the person will tell, all that will come in his product. So individually produced and carefully designed. If owner has given any design, he wants elephants, camels on his cloth, or whatever the design he want, that type of special design also could be there on that cloth. That's why it was used by only aristocrats. Machine made goods were for export to the colonies. To the colonies means, like in India, colonial rule was there. Britishers were ruling. So machine made clothes were exported to these countries where colonies rule was there. Machine made clothes were not like handmade clothes, because machine made clothes are made in machine. So those of same color, same designs, no any variations were there. Like this, those clothes were. You can see here hand labor and steam power. Now we'll see the next part, that is life of the workers. Now how the life of these workers was. Here one picture. People on the move to search of work. The Bastard, London News, 1879. So now people did not have work in the villages, so they have moved from their villages towards town to search the work. In next figure you can see houseless and hungry people are there. This is painted by Samuel Luke Flights, 1874. So these artisans, craftspeople, workers were jobless, houseless and hungry. So they were roaming here and there in the search of food. You can see small children also, they are also suffering from hunger, thirst and houselessness. The abundance of labor in the market affected the lives of workers. Abundance means a lot of workers were available now in the market. So all the workers, all the people were not getting work daily. As news of possible jobs travelled to the countryside, hundreds tramped to the city. When people got to know that in a city the job is available in the industries, all of the people have rushed towards the cities from their countryside, from the villages. The actual possibility of getting a job depended on existing networks of friendship and keen relations. But how the people were getting job when they were reaching in the city? If they have any recommendation, if they have any person in that factory already, like if their friend is there, any relative is there in the factory already working, so they were getting the job. Remaining people had to return back. If you had a relative or a friend in a factory, you were more likely to get a job quickly. But not everyone had social connections. It was not possible that all the people who have gone from countryside, they will have any relative or any friend in the factory. Many job seekers had to wait weeks, spending nights under bridges or in night shelters. Some stayed in night refuges that were set up by private individuals. Others went to the casual wards maintained by the poor law authorities. So very bad and poor condition was there of these workers. If they don't have any connections, any relations with the people in the factory, they were not getting jobs and they have to wait weeks and weeks to get the job. In this case, they were spending their nights under bridge, they are spending their days roaming around the city to get the work, and they were staying somewhere wherever they get the place, like they were living like as a refugee in someone's house, as a casual ward they were living, or they were taking shelters under the bridge or night shelters. The fear of unemployment made workers hostile to the introduction of new technology. So, people have become more cautious about this, or that fear has come in the mind of people or the workers who were working in the industry, that if new machines will come, if new technology will come in the factory, they will lose their job and again they will be unemployed. When the spinning jenny was introduced in the woolen industry, women who survived on hand spinning began attacking the new machines. So, as I told above, that when these machines will come, workers thought that we will lose our job. That's why when this spinning jenny introduced first time in the woolen industry, the women who were working the spinning of the cotton, they have attacked on these new machines. They have not accepted these machines because they were going to lose their jobs. This conflict over the introduction of the jenny continued for a long time. Factory owners wanted spinning jenny in their industry and women did not agree for that. So this conflict or this issue was going on for many of the days and months, for a long time. In this picture you can see this spinning jenny is there. It has come in 1835. You can see the people without work, which were helpless, doing whatever the odd jobs they get. This is a picture of Thomas Newcomen. Hundreds tramped to the cities, where we have seen that when industry started, hundreds of people have rushed towards the cities. The age of Indian textiles. Before the age of machine industries, silk and cotton goods from India dominated the international market in textiles. Coarser cottons were produced in many countries, but the finer varieties often came from India. Armenian and Persian merchants took the goods from Surat on the Gujarat coast, connected India to the Gulf and Red Sea ports. Masulipatinam on the Coromandel coast and Hooghly in Bengal had trade links with the other countries. So in India, which cotton was there, that was of best quality, so which cloth was manufactured in the textile industries, that was also of the best quality compared to the other countries' cotton. The European companies gradually gained power, first securing a variety of concessions from local courts, then the monopoly rights to trade. So Europeans also have started their own manufacturing industries. So they also got the better market. This resulted in a decline of old ports of Surat and Hooghly through which local merchants had operated. When Britain has started import and export, the ports also have changed. Exports from these ports fell dramatically. The credit that had financed the earlier trade began drying up, and the local bankers slowly went bankrupt. So previously, the Surat and Hooghly, these two ports have been used for transportation, for import and export, but now dramatically the places have changed. You can see in these pictures this Bombay Harbour in one picture and the English factory at Surat, 1700s drawing it is. While Surat and Hooghly decayed, Bombay and Calcutta grew. The new ones was an indicator of the growth of colonial power. Trade through the new ports came to be controlled by European companies and was carried in European ship. So the new ones was an indicator of growth of colonial power. How this colonial power was growing, trading has started, and in many more countries this trading has been improved. Now the next is coming weavers, the problem of weavers, that what happened to weavers who were weaving the clothes in countryside, in the villages. The consolidation of East India Company power after the 1760s did not initially lead to a decline in textile exports from India. British cotton industries had not yet expanded and Indian fine textiles were in great demand in Europe. The company was keen on expanding textile exports from India. It appointed a paid servant called the Gomasta to supervise weavers, collect supplies, and examine the quality of cloth. Those who took loans had to hand over the cloth they produced to the Gomasta. As we have seen previously that merchants were there, means the middlemen. That same happened with the weavers also, and here now Gomastas were working as merchants and they were providing raw material to the people in countryside, and people, these artisans have to submit or give their ready cloth to the Gomastas. Manchester comes to India. In 1772, Henry Petula that the demand for Indian textile could never reduce since no other nation produced goods of the same quality. Cotton weavers in India thus faced two problems at the same time. Their export market collapsed and the local market shrank. In this both way, export market collapsed, so which foreign currency have stopped to come, and in local market the lots of material was available. That's why its range, its prices also have been decreased. Being glutted with Manchester imports produced by machines at lower cost, the imported cotton goods were so cheap that weavers could not easily compete with them by the 1850s. As weaving cloth was expensive, it was taking a lot of time, but this machine made cloth was of less of price. That's why now these artisans or the weavers had again problem. Weavers faced a new problem. They could not get sufficient supply of raw cotton of good quality. When the American Civil War broke out and cotton supplies from the US were cut off, Britain turned to India as raw cotton exports from India. Britain always coming towards India because raw material was getting here. Again, they have come here to take the cotton or to take the raw material from our country. Increase the price of raw cotton shot up. Weavers in India were starved of supplies and forced to buy raw cotton at exorbitant prices. In this situation, weaving would not pay. So the prices of raw cotton also has been risen up. Weavers in India were starved because their material was not sold or not exported, and that's why now their basic requirements also were not fulfilled, that food and shelter, these requirements also were not fulfilled. Factories in India began production, flooding the market with machine goods. How could weaving industries possibly survive? Many of the factories have started and factory made clothes have started everywhere. In 1854 was the year when Mumbai got his first mill called Bombay Spinning Mill, famous for producing cotton textiles to be exported to Britain. By 1870, there were about 13 mills, and by 1875, total count of mills in Mumbai was about 70, which still went up to 83 by 1915. The Elgin mill was started in Kanpur in the 1860s. So this Elgin mill was started in Kanpur in 1860s, in different years, different places. These mills have been started. Jute mills come up in Bengal, the first being set up in 1855. The early entrepreneurs who set up the industries in Bengal, Dwarkanath Tagore made his fortune in the China trade before he turned to industrial investment. Seth Hukumchand, a Marwari businessman who set up the first Indian jute mill in Calcutta in 1917, also traded with China. So did the father as well as grandfather of the famous industrialist G.D. Birla. These many of the entrepreneurs were started their businesses before 3-4 generations at different places. You can see this picture that these are the partners of enterprise, or these are the previous entrepreneurs. J.N. Tata, R.D. Tata, Sir R.J. Tata and Sir D.J. Tata from one family itself. This is picture of 1912. Where did the workers come from? Then to work in these factories, from where the workers have been brought. Bombay Cotton Industries in 1911 came from the neighboring district of Ratnagiri. The mills of Kanpur got most of their textile hands from the villages within the district of Kanpur. Mill workers moved between the village and the city, returning to their village homes during harvest and festivals. A head jobber, you can see here a jobber, how the person is, his personality. You can see that he has the special post over here. Industrialists usually employed a jobber to get new recruits, means to get new people, new employee. She was working. Very often the jobber was an old and trusted worker. He got people from his village, ensured them jobs, helped them settle in the city, and provided them money in times of crisis. He began demanding money and gifts for his favors and controlling the lives of workers. So the work of jobber was important here because he was in the relation with the villagers as well as the owner of the factory. Spinners at work in an Ahmedabad mill, you can see in the picture the peculiarities of industrial growth. They established tea and coffee plantations, acquiring land at cheap rates from the colonial government, and they invested in mining, indigo, and jute. Most of these were products required primarily for export trade and not for sale in India. As the Swadeshi movement gathered momentum, nationalists mobilized people to boycott foreign clothes. Different movements were there, and that benefit also got to these industries. First war, industrial growth was slow. The war created a dramatically new situation with British mills busy with war production to meet the needs of the army. Manchester imports into India declined. Suddenly, Indian mills had a vast home market to supply. As the war prolonged, Indian factories were called upon to supply war needs. Jute bags, cloth for army uniforms, tents and leather boots, horse and mule saddles, and a host of other items. There were many things required for the army which were fighting in the First World War, and that's why the industrial growth has happened at the time of First World War. Small scale industries predominate. Most of them, about 67% in 1911, were located in Bengal and Bombay. Over the rest of the country, small scale production continued to predominate. These small scale industries were there for the manufacturing of many of the things which were required. Now we'll come towards the last point of this lesson, market for goods. That different products were there manufactured by the industries. Then what was the condition of market? British manufacturers attempted to take over the Indian market. New products are produced, people have to be persuaded to buy them. Which new products were coming in the market, the owner of the factories were making the tricks that people should attract towards the good. New products are produced, people should come to purchase that, try to shape the minds of the people and create new needs. They appear in newspapers, magazines, hoardings, street walls, television screens, etc. So, manufacturers have started to make the advertisements of their products. As you are seeing here in this slide, one picture is of gripe water, which is on calendar of 1928. There is a picture of Lord Krishna. As we know, Lord Krishna is a favorite lord among all the women, and all the women think that her child must be like Lord Krishna or Balakrishna, healthy and how he is looking like that, her child also must be. So, women will come to purchase this gripe water. Another picture you see here, Manchester labels, early 20th century. This is a picture of God. You can see that which Indian people worshipping gods and goddesses all the time, So if picture of God means it gives us assurance that the product is good. Another pictures are used in different products are, this is the picture of Maharaja Ranjit Singh, which was an ideal for the Indian people. Then Sunlight Soap Calendar of 1934. This is again depicting that sun is there, then Vishnu is there, and this soap is like that God is bringing us sunlight. Sunlight means everything for us. Sunlight gives us life. So this soap is also like that, very pure. So these different types of advertisements have used to make the product publicized. When Manchester industrialists began selling cloth in India, the label was also to be mark of quality. When buyers saw made in Manchester, they were expected to feel confident about buying the clothes. Images of Indian gods, goddesses regularly appeared on these labels. It was as if the association with gods. The imprinted image of Krishna or Saraswati was also intended to make the manufacture from a foreign land appear somewhat familiar to Indian people, as though the cloth or any material has come from foreign country, but there is picture of our God. Like that Indian people were thinking, and they were attracting towards the product. Calendars were used, hung in tea shops and in poor people's homes just as much as in offices and middle class apartments. Emperors and Nawabs also were using. So you can see here another last one picture of the book, that an Indian milk cloth label, that when goddess is giving the cloth to these children, it means that it is a pure cloth or it is good quality cloth we have to purchase. In this way we have seen the lesson, the age of industrialization, how changes have come before industrialization and after industrialization. Thank you.